just by acknowledging that we are located on the traditional lands of Metchewan, Matagami, and Flying Post First Nations, which is home to many Ojibwe, Cree, Oji-Cree, and Algonquin and Métis people. We also acknowledge that we are situated in Treaty 9 territory, which is also known as the James Bay Treaty, and this is steeped in the rich Indigenous history of many First Nation people. Thank you for joining us for this morning's webinar, Leveraging Solar Energy for Your Agriculture Business. Agribusiness Knowledge Camp is a program led by the Timmins Economic Development in collaboration with Bioenterprise Canada and Link North. It's designed to increase your knowledge as well as build capacity within your business to grow your operations. So again, this morning, our Bioenterprise rep is on vacation. So I'll just briefly touch on their programming. In particular, they want to note that they have the Food and Agri-Tech Engine, which is called the Engine for short. And this is a national network of collaboration, commercialization, and thought leadership, which empowers innovation and creates growth opportunities for organizations and business startups and scale-ups. Through this engine, Bioenterprises harnesses the skills, experience, and networks of leaders across Canada in the ag innovation ecosystem into their Agri-Tech Alliance. Through the same network, they share various resources, knowledge, and connectivity among the engine's members and partners. I will shortly share the link to join their engine in the chats. Just briefly want to touch on the organizations I represent. So first, the Timmins Economic Development Corporation, which focuses on advancing community and economic development in Timmins and the region. So developing the ag sector is an important area for us. We want to focus on supporting our businesses with helping them to access funding and other resources to develop their agribusiness, as well as work with regional communities and partners like Bioenterprise to create a thriving and sustainable ag business sector. So co-located with the TDC is Link North, which is our regional innovation center. So they provide business advisory services and boost funding up to $10,000 to support entrepreneurs and business clients with launching, scaling, and growing their business operations. So whether you're an entrepreneur looking to start a business or you're an established agriculture business looking to grow further, these organizations will help. And again, shortly I'll drop the information in the chat how you can reach out to us. So I want to introduce Patrick Gossage, who is the president of Agrivoltaics Canada. Patrick is an entrepreneur driven by sustainability. I'm just going to mute the participant. So as the managing partner at Good Energy Partners and president of Agrivoltaics Canada, Patrick champions win-win solutions for the environment and the economy, positioning him as a leading voice in sustainable energy. So please welcome Patrick.
Thanks so much, Ross. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you folks. And I'll just share my screen. I've got about a 20-slide presentation here. And Ross, just confirming that you can see that. Good?
Yes, I can see yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks everyone for taking the time here really to share this term called agrivoltaics, which hopefully some of you may have heard of by now, but it's a relatively nascent concept and newer practice, let's call it. It's, I always say, an overly fancy and technical sounding term for something that's quite a simple concept, which is combining solar and agriculture in a meaningful way, as opposed to having solar farms compete with farmlands and taking ag out of production. The goal with this practice is 1 + 1 = 3, and you have a symbiotic relationship between solar farming and we can actually increase agricultural production as a result. So I guess I'm just going to start a little bit with my story and how I fell into this space, because it, in all honesty, was completely accidental. I had never heard of the term before in 2018. The concept was completely foreign to me. And just a bit about my backstory. So I initially cut my teeth in the renewable energy space in South Africa. In 2010, I moved to Cape Town to complete a business degree at the University of Cape Town. Saw that there was a massive energy crisis that was occurring in South Africa. So the first 3 years that I lived there, the cost of electricity increased 25% per year for 3 years in a row. So massive energy shocks. And I recognized the need to come up with a business focused on some solutions. So primarily energy efficiency and rooftop energy solutions for the built environment, for a lot of commercial and industrial businesses to help them fight the rising cost of electricity. Moved back to Canada in at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And one of the first projects that I undertook is what you can see in the picture here. So I worked with a local manufacturer of solar panels, Haleen, who's actually in Sault Ste. Marie. And in 2018, at the time, this was if you can believe it, the first Trump tariff wars. Looks like we're having that fight again as we speak. But as a result, Haleen, whose principal customers were in the United States, was struggling to compete because of tariffs and because of cheaper Asian imports. So we were looking at ways to create some bespoke, more niche products where they could compete and hold their margins. And we were lucky enough to get a government grant to create what you can see here is a greenhouse integrated solar module. So it's semi-transparent. So it allowed light to penetrate through, and we replaced the existing glass of the greenhouse with half an acre of these modules to test it out. And I'll show you the video that we created. And just a quick apology, when testing this video with Ross this morning, the audio does not come through. You aren't going to be missing, it's just a musical score. There's no content that you're missing, but just a quick note on that. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides again. So yeah, this was my first introduction into this dual use concept. And to be 100% honest, I did not think it was going to work. I did not think the plants underneath these solar modules would grow effectively. And sorry, can you guys still hear and see? Just confirming.
Yes.
Okay, good. So did not think that this was going to work. And we had Niagara College come in and do some independent analysis and determine that, in this case, it was potted basil that was being grown in the greenhouse, and a fuller potted basil plant actually grew underneath these solar modules versus the regular greenhouse glass. So this was my eureka moment. Started doing some digging and realizing that this agrivoltaics concept was growing serious legs in other more land-constrained countries such as Japan, Italy, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, and saw the opportunity to make a push to have agrivoltaics and more efficient land use as a concept in Ontario, but broadly speaking in Canada as well. So this was the genesis of me going down this major rabbit hole to the point where I am now, and I'll get a little bit more into that as we go through these slides. But just to say again, this technical sounding term, the photovoltaic part, photovoltaics are a reference to the technology, the dominant solar technology. So that's where the voltaics come. And of course, agri is a reference to agriculture. And the concept is quite simple, just generating renewable energy while enhancing agricultural productivity. It gets nuanced and complex as you dig deeper, but the concept is quite a simple one. So there's a number of different flavors of agrivoltaics. So you saw an example of greenhouse solar. That project was undertaken in Niagara, and we also in Leamington in southwestern Ontario, there's quite a large greenhouse sector where they're quite power constrained at the moment, and we actually lobbied for some incentives, which I can talk about a little bit later on, that make it quite attractive to adopt solar for greenhouse businesses. Probably the most common flavor of agrivoltaics is grazing, and in particular with sheep. Sheep are very docile animals. Unlike goats, they don't jump on the modules, and they effectively act as living lawnmowers that negate the need for running an actual gas-powered lawnmower, which is expensive and polluting. So there's quite a nice symbiotic relationship. The sheep love the shade on high heat days in the summer. And that is probably the most established flavor of agrivoltaics that has, we've got working examples in Ontario dating back to, probably before 2015. So over 10 years of working examples in Ontario of that combination. We also have crop production. So in particular, more shade tolerant crops, but there's configurations where we use elevated panels or vertical mounts that you can see in the bottom left there to act as windbreaks. So for blueberries, that's quite useful. And then even using elevated reinforced for cattle grazing, a larger animal that can obviously have some impact on the equipment. So there's different configurations to accommodate for cattle that we're experimenting a lot with at the moment, both here and in the US. So some of the on-farm benefits, natural vegetation control, as talked about. You actually have improved water retention because of the microclimates created by the solar modules. So you have less evapotranspiration and improved soil health as a result. Arguably, most importantly, this agrivoltaics can act as a very consistent, reliable revenue stream for farmers and allow economic diversification that you can then use to finance other farming equipment or more modern farms of the future type equipment. And a big thing for us as a developer of these agrivoltaic projects is the community acceptance piece. So we find if you're threatening to take agricultural land out of production, there's a lot of pushback, understandably. It impacts food security. So we find there's a much greater community acceptance when you explain this concept of combining farming and solar farming, and the benefits that we've just touched on. I think we need to just mute someone on the call. So here are some working examples of agrivoltaics. Raspberries are a particularly shade tolerant crop. So they grow in forests naturally. And these are some examples of agrivoltaics with raspberries that have occurred in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is extremely far ahead on all of this stuff. I learned a stat recently that the Netherlands is the #2 exporter of farming produce or farm produce in the world after the United States. And the Netherlands is a fraction of the size of Ontario, which in part has forced it to be innovative so that it can feed its population, and they've been successful to the point where they're the #2 exporter. So lots of technology is imported from the Netherlands and know-how, and they're definitely an example to look to for the future of farming. So what does all that mean for Ontario? As we are well aware, Ford was sworn in again with a majority, and that means some consistency in terms of Ontario's goals, or at least that's what we expect. Ford ran on essentially building out infrastructure. So highways, housing, and electricity is all part of that. We're very focused on the electricity piece, and we expect that we're going to hear some more announcements from Stephen Lecce about the need to speed up energy procurements to keep Ontario competitive, particularly in light of the tariffs. Ross, I think there's just one person that we need to mute on the call. There we go. So the reason this is important and pertinent right now is our energy demand forecast in Ontario is set to skyrocket in the near term. A lot of that is to do with data centers. Some of it is electrification of everything, net migration to the province, and then also some of these major load centers that have been talked about. So the auto plants, Stellantis, Honda, I believe it's Honda, and Volkswagen have all had announcements about locating plants in southern Ontario. We'll see what happens with that in light of the auto tariffs that were just announced. But certainly, regardless, there's a massive demand forecast that needs to be met somehow. Ontario, and we're looking to see if there's going to be any revisions to this because the announcement was made prior to the election. But October looks like the starting date for the first large-scale procurement of energy in Ontario in quite some time. So we're awaiting announcements on that. And it's expected that the province is looking to procure in the neighborhood of 7,500 megawatts of power. over the course of the next 4 years, which would be by far the largest energy procurement in Ontario's history. So as mentioned, Stephen Lecce is still sworn in as Minister of Energy and Mines, as many of you probably know. And we expect that means momentum for building quickly, an emphasis on building in the north too, quite notably for folks on this call. There's going to be a major focus on building out transmission lines in the north, co-location of generation with data centers and mining operations, and developing the Ring of Fire. So quite relevant to you folks. Also, the emphasis is on an affordable energy strategy. So Lecce has said he doesn't care how the power is generated, as long it's essentially whoever can generate power for the lowest cost wins. So we feel that we're in a good position as agrivoltaic solar developers. Solar power is the cheapest form of new generation in most geographies. And there's some additional tax credits and low-cost finance that we can leverage to help make us competitive in this upcoming competitive procurement. But we are up against all forms of technology, whether that be hydro, nuclear, wind, gas, etc. Part of the reason we think we have a competitive advantage with agrivoltaics is that, like conventional solar, it can be built relatively quickly. There's a faster permitting process, as I'm sure you can imagine. Nuclear and hydroelectricity have extremely long lead times, extensive permitting and consultation requirements, and that is not the same with solar or agrivoltaics. We can build these projects start to finish within a couple of years, depending on the scale. On smaller scale projects, even less time. And typically wind requires slightly longer lead times because of the need to get accurate met station data. This slide is a little bit dated, but it gives you some idea of the installed capacity of solar across the country. Ontario is leading the way with the most megawatts installed, but we really haven't had much activity in Ontario in the past 10 years. There hasn't been a utility scale program, so there's been some greater uptake in residential and commercial and industrial projects, but not at a utility scale. In contrast, Alberta, up until Daniel Smith put a moratorium on new generation, I think it was last August, or maybe August 2023, or 2024, sorry. Alberta was the province that was generating the most solar and wind energy. It was really gaining a huge amount of steam, and we were seeing power projects, and this issue was cited by Daniel Smith. There was this land use competition with agriculture, and Danielle Smith cited this as one of the reasons for putting the brakes on solar procurement. And she's actually since then cited agrivoltaics as one of the means to combat that land use conflict. So now projects that are being built in Alberta are encouraged to have agricultural impact assessments and use agrivoltaics as a means to actually enhance agricultural productivity. So it's really becoming a requirement in Alberta for solar projects. And we're seeing that in other countries as well. like Italy, France, etc. So what does all this mean for you folks? So there's, broadly speaking, three different ways for you to capitalize on solar. Um, and I've just simply categorized them as small projects, medium projects, and large projects. Small projects, there's something called the Save On program, which is run by the IESO, the Independent Electricity System Operator, who essentially runs the grid in Ontario. They have incentives for more rooftop type solar energy, as well as other energy efficiency projects. Um, and then I'll touch on the other. There's a local procurement which has been announced but not finalized, as well as the utility scale massive procurement that I've been touching on that starts in October. So this is the smaller save on incentives, smaller projects. I think I made reference to the fact that there are incentives for greenhouse installations off the top when I was showcasing that video. But there's also for distributed, they call it distributed energy resources. So essentially rooftop solar. There are incentives. Basically, you'll get money back on CapEx that's deployed that nets an energy efficiency outcome, including with solar. This project, we're supposed to get more information, about medium-sized projects. So that being 100 kilowatts to up to 10 megawatts. They're calling this local generation, and we're supposed to get more information on this program in April. So should be hearing hopefully soon. Yeah, there should be. This is what I refer to as the medium-sized projects, and we should have a program for smaller, more local generation. This will be useful for data centers, for instance, and potentially for businesses as well, including agricultural businesses. And then, as mentioned off the top, so the Ontario Utility Scale program is referred to as LT2. It's the largest procurement in Ontario's history. We're expecting the first window so the first RFP to happen in October, and then every year for the next 4 years following, we're expecting a new bid window to open for more electricity generation. So quite a major program. That's what Good Energy Partners is predominantly involved in. It's getting ready for that procurement in October. So we're busy chatting to landowners, getting environmental permitting done, chatting to financiers, and getting these projects bid ready for this upcoming procurement. So I sort of stole my own thunder there, but that, as mentioned, that's what Good Energy Partners is about. We're predominantly getting ready for the Ontario procurement, and our specialty is developing agrivoltaic projects in particular. So this is a bit of a summation slide, but in short, agrivoltaics is growing massively globally. You're even getting bipartisan support for agrivoltaic bills in the US. And as we know, Americans tend to agree on very, very little. So our feeling is if they can do it in the US, surely we should be able to do it in Canada. Yeah, a little bit more on the support for this growing field. And because we recognize the need for Canada to compete against the US and other countries on a energy sovereignty and food sovereignty basis. We felt it prudent to create an industry body, not for profit, which is called Agrivoltaics Canada. Our website is agrivoltaicscanada.ca. Please go. There's lots of resources about different flavors of agrivoltaics there. We're in the process of coming up with policy requests for each of the major provinces that have solar programs. So BC, Alberta, Ontario, and the Maritimes. And we have a few conferences every year. This year we're having one in near Red Deer, Alberta, and also one in the Greater Toronto area. So I hope that some of you might be able to attend those. We have webinars. We've got a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page where we're sharing content quite a lot, and encourage any farmers to join and become members. It's $50 a year, so not a huge investment. And really the idea is we're trying to align ourselves with a number of other agricultural industry bodies. So we've got a close relationship with the Ontario Sheep Association, cattle grazing, and we're building more bridges. Very excited that Ross invited us here today. We're also a partner with BioEnterprise, and we're trying to build these bridges to grow agrivoltaics as a sector. And we believe agrivoltaics is the gold standard in terms of development, responsible development. So we are trying to push best practices through this organization to encourage what we feel is responsible development that furthers Canadian food and energy security. So that is it. I have a few more slides, but they're just digging deeper into different flavors of agrivoltaics. Should you wish to reach out to me, please, contact details are there, patrick@goodenergypartners.ca. I also have an Agrivoltaics Canada website, or email rather. And maybe I'll pause there and we can do some Q&A, Ross.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Patrick. As Patrick said, we can open it up for Q&A now. You can unmute or you can type your question in the chat and I'll say it.
Hi,
Oh, yeah,
Patrick.
oh, quick.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
It's Jared. Yeah, I was curious. You mentioned there's quite a bit of research going on into what design changes can be made to accommodate cattle grazing more effectively. Has there been any kind of preliminary stuff done or results that you know of that would kind of share? What I'm mainly interested in is just like the added cost and things like that to get if it's pedestals up higher and stuff, just so that the cattle can kind of get under them. And that I see a lot of opportunity with cattle grazing. That's why especially out west, which is where I'm focused. Yeah.
100%. Great question. Cattle grazing is often seen as the holy grail of agrivoltaics because of exactly what you pointed out. The west, the amount of grazing opportunities there are in Western Canada for sure, as well as in Ontario. So we have been doing a lot of investigation on this. We were actually supposed to have a call with a group called HUWA, HUWA, that is in the US. And they have been doing a lot of work on this. They currently have 3 100-megawatt sites that they're grazing cattle on. And they're doing rotational grazing. And what they have actually said was very, very interesting, that they've retrofit these cattle into conventional systems. So no additional steel, no additional height. And it's just been extra work from an operational standpoint. And the extra work has been, they've said, and this is anecdotal, but that there's in each herd, there's only a few problematic cattle that like to rub up against the modules. And so if they just select out those problematic cattle, they said they've only had one panel damaged on 300 megawatt sites because of that.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
Which is amazing. There is a huge amount of work being done by the Department of Energy in the US on cattle grazing. So the DOE has spent quite a lot of money, and there's case studies that are currently underway across the US. I know that there are many working examples of cattle grazing in New York State. So New York has quite a, I don't know, call it aggressive community energy program.
Yeah, their community solar program has kind of been at the forefront.
Yeah. So there are definitely some examples there. And also I'm told Minnesota as well has some working examples. Another resource, are you familiar with the American Solar Grazing Association?
I think I've seen a few of their things just kind of in passing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're a useful resource on solar grazing. One of the board members there, Kevin Campbell, is a really strong agrivoltaics enthusiast advocate. He works for EDF, the massive French company.
Yeah.
He's a good resource on this, and he's actually the person who directed me to this HUWA company. I'm not sure how they pronounce it, but
Gotcha.
but yeah, I mean, feel free. Like this is something that we're extremely focused on because we see the opportunity, and maybe I should just share in obviously not total confidence, but we've been shortlisted for a NRCan grant for cattle grazing in Alberta. So
Oh, great.
yeah, so we're
So
actively
the grant would help offset the additional cost of the design to accommodate
correct.
it. Yeah,
Correct.
great.
Correct.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good question. You've obviously done some homework on this.
Yeah, I grew up on a cattle farm. My parents still there, and I've been in renewables for like 18 years and stuff. So I can just see the benefit and talk to lots of people over the years. I know there'd be a lot more uptake and stuff, and a lot of these areas and stuff too. It's they're quite arid and they're quite dry, which is why they also keep them as grass. And then this would be, in areas that don't get much rain, this would even help, a
Sure.
lot more.
Yeah, Southern Alberta is a good candidate. And so which you said you're in renewables. What outfit are you with?
Just got a chance to kind of start up my own thing here in the last 6 months or so. It's called Osprey Power. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I used to work at I worked in the US for BW Solar doing community solar mostly and some large scale solar, and then previous to that I was at Blue Earth Renewables for about 6 years, and then also at TransAlta. So been
okay. And you're based in Alberta?
I live in BC now. Yeah, Kimberley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean I've got some folks I could connect you with for sure. BC and elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm also working with a few guys that are starting up kind of a community solar type program or a company focused in the US again as well for, chasing some of the more incentive type states and stuff with community solar. And so this is very interesting there too, because there's, a lot of those, like you mentioned, New York, it's starting to get a lot more saturated in terms of sites and people that want to sign up and stuff. So, being able to unlock some more opportunities like this, I think could be pretty good. So
Yeah, and happy to have some chats on collaboration as well. You know, we should probably take it offline, but
sure.
we've got some opportunities that in certain states that we just don't have time to pay attention to. So
Okay. Yeah, no, that'd be great. One more question I had was, and I've never really been able to see a good solution for it, but just was curious if there's any for lots of areas that might have like irrigated farmland. Has there ever been any sort of designs or considerations that would be able to still allow for irrigation on a parcel with solar? I can't see it being very easy, just with like if you think of us, a pivot irrigation or even the straight line, I
yeah,
just don't see that it would work well,
yeah.
but just was kind of curious if there's ever been
So
anything like that.
with pivots, I've seen don't have firsthand experience, but I've seen people essentially just pick off the
Use the
corners.
corners. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, I wouldn't call it the most seamlessly integrated approach, but it's a workaround, call it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know there's some work being done by a colleague of mine who's a board member at Agrivoltaics Canada, Claude Mindorf, has been working with some of the larger irrigation firms in Alberta to address.
Like the irrigation districts and stuff.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So he, another person that I could potentially connect you with.
Yeah,
to give
I
you a
met
full.
Claude like
Okay.
15 years ago, probably when I was at TransAlta. He was doing wind development
Yeah.
in I forget the company at the time, but great. No, that's really helpful. Nice presentation.
Good.
Oh, I was curious on the example you showed at the start with the with the little video there and the greenhouse. Like it looks like the wafers obviously are just spaced apart within the panel, like they're not dense like a traditional panel and stuff, so that you still have some light coming through into the greenhouse.
Correct.
About what like I guess capacity would one of those be? It looks like it might be like roughly like a third wafers. Is that
Yeah, we created two prototypes. So one is produces a third the energy, or looking at it the other way, has 2/3 transparency.
yeah.
And then the other one has 66. So we initially tried. You may have noticed in the video there was kind of a checkerboard.
Yeah, and then a few
with
straight line ones.
Yeah, and then I referred to them as the race stripe and the checkerboard, just for lack of a better term. And we had a lot of difficulty with the smaller cells breaking, and there was additional cost, and no real additional benefit that was noted from that from either a generation or plant growth standpoint. So we've now defaulted to that racing stripe format. And yeah, you can either have 2 or 4 rows, so 33 or 66% coverage, depending on,
Gotcha.
and it's
Guess it
it's
depends
a
on the plants they're trying to grow, right? Really,
yeah,
like how much sun you need getting through.
exactly. And also usually some economic analysis on what's the value of the energy versus the crop value, or
Gotcha.
what's your weighting.
Mhm.
We did a project in Washington State, I believe it was, and they were using this section of greenhouse more for storage. So we increased the density. And one of the nice things about that product, and we'll see what happens in the U.S. But the U.S. with the Inflation Reduction Act has an investment tax credit, which we've adopted in Canada, and so we were able to apply that investment tax credit. This was a new build greenhouse, so not retrofitting. We were able to apply some of that to the actual structure of the greenhouse because it was effectively the mounting system for the
Just
the
like you'd
solar
apply it to the racking system on a
Correct.
traditional site. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another question in the chat. So has there been discussion in Ontario about agrivoltaics as a solution for developing solar projects on prime agriculture land? And what kind of advocacy supports this approach and is happening regularly?
Yeah, very contentious issue in Ontario and in most places across Canada and globally. So the advocacy work is being done by Agrivoltaics Canada. We're actively engaged with folks at OMAFA, at the OFA. We've spoken to Stephen Lecce. I actually don't know who the new agriculture minister is because it was just changed, but we reached out to Lisa Thompson in the past, and so we're it's a fight that we believe in and we're having. Part of the issue is just the way solar was originally rolled out in Ontario. There wasn't much community consultation back in the day, and because of how lucrative the feed-in tariff was, it really did take a lot of farms out of production, and there was some understandable pushback as a result of that. And we're having to fight that legacy, and say that this is not yesterday's solar with the feed-in tariff in Ontario. This is cost competitive without subsidies. And this is a way for farmers to keep farming, particularly family farmers. It's a means for farmers to not have to sell to a big conglomerate, get some economically diversify, and keep agricultural production. It's our thesis that we're not losing farms to solar. There hasn't been any solar development in over 10 years in Ontario. It's our contention that we're losing farms, in large part because it can be quite a tough business, and also to housing, not so much solar, and we think solar can be a friend to farming.
Just to add to that point, Patrick, so is Northern Ontario a little bit different than Southern Ontario in that we might not have very little land that's actually identified as prime agriculture land?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And I should have mentioned this in the presentation, but there is an incentive for projects to be located in the north. So although the provincial government really just cares about price, they've got what's called rated criteria points. So you get points that effectively lessen your price that you're selling the power at. You get points for things like Indigenous participation, for locating in the north. You get points for that. And also not locating on prime ag if you're a wind farm or something to that effect. So yeah, this government definitely seems to have a focus on building out the north, whether that's transmission lines, ring of fire, incentivizing projects on crown land up there. It's yeah, there's definitely a focus on that.
Okay. So, what are some of the challenges that you see with agrivoltaics, let's say in our Northern Ontario climate, like with our snowfall and longer winters, whether actual or perceived, and what are some of the ways developers could overcome those?
I mean, one of the difficulties is just the terrain, and not as much cleared land. So you know, the reasons you have more prime farmlands in southwestern Ontario are the reasons. You know, it makes logical sense that where you would want to locate um, agriculture competes with solar. You want you know, good soil, flat cleared lands that gets a fair amount of sun. There is definitely an increasing, as you guys would know better than me, an increasing amount of agricultural activity happening in the north, particularly along the clay belt. And you know, perhaps in light of the fact that it is getting warmer, and we have a longer amount of grow days in the north. So we do definitely see potential, but you know, there's many areas that are rocky or hilly, or you know, just more challenging to, and more challenging and therefore more costly to build on, and that impacts the price that we as a developer can sell the power at, which makes it harder to compete. But we definitely are interested in certain areas in particular.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so in terms of like overall development and number of farms and other agri businesses, in the north. Do see an increase, and we are seeing an increase.
For sure.
There's still some challenges with the kind of low revenue generation given our geographical location, low density of people and stuff. But agrivoltaics, that's why I was kind of interested in this presentation because that could be a new potential revenue generator for ag businesses to make them help them grow and flourish.
100%.
Okay, so another question. So are there agrivoltaic systems that are built in Canada or North America? There's been some discussion on decoupling from China in recent election.
Yep. Yeah, there's a huge amount happening in the US. There's over, I mean, just on the solar grazing front, there's last I checked, over 100,000 acres under a form of solar grazing management. And the American Solar Grazing Association is North American focused. They've got a free website with lots of information about where some of those sites are located. To my knowledge, the greenhouse integrated project that I undertook was the first large scale agrivoltaic project in a greenhouse, certainly in North America at the time. It was 2018. So we've got lots of data from that. It's in the Niagara area in Southwest Ontario. And we're actively developing projects as we speak. It's it's somewhat nascent. Solar grazing in Ontario has been around for over 10 years. So a number of the feed and tariff projects were retrofit with sheep. So we've got examples all over Ontario of that, from Windsor to Grey County to in and around the Ottawa Valley. Lots of examples of that, and we've got we've even seen we've seen immigrant farmers who can't afford the exorbitant land prices in Ontario but want to farm. We've got one guy from Brazil who's actually built a business around agrivoltaics. So he goes to solar asset owners and makes arrangements with them to get access to their land and they pay him a contract for him. It's called vegetation management. So the asset owners need the grass or the vegetation kept at a certain length for insurance purposes to prevent against fires. And so he's paid. He not only gets the land for free, but he gets paid on a per acre basis for vegetation management. And we've got at Agrivoltaics Canada and through the American Solar Grazing Association, we've got those templated contracts that people can leverage for free. And this guy's, built a business around providing a service for solar asset owners and averted the need to purchase land.
Yeah, so just the follow-up to that question, someone's wondering about component manufacturing locations in Canada and North America.
Yeah, there isn't a lot. So Haleen, the company that I worked with in Sault Ste. Marie and still work with, they're one of the only games in town from a solar module manufacturing standpoint, and they've moved a lot of their business to the US because of Trump's tariffs in 2018 and also the Inflation Reduction Act. We've really been pushing the province of Ontario and the Canadian government to assist businesses like Haleen. But it's tough from a Canadian standpoint. There just isn't the market to and the market conditions to support it at this stage. The biggest renewable company to come out of Canada, Canadian Solar, there's nothing really Canadian about them anymore. They're based in China, and a lot of their development work occurs in the US. So yeah, unfortunately, we need to do a better job.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think we'll conclude today. So thank you, Patrick, for a very informative presentation on solar energy opportunities. And thank you for everyone for attending today's masterclass. So please join us Thursday, April 10th, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. for our final session of our 2025 program, as we'll welcome Sabine Bouchard from College Boreal, who's going to discuss research and innovation opportunities at Boreal to support agriculture businesses. So the registration for this isn't open yet, so be sure to follow us on Eventbrite and on social media, and we'll also email registrants the session link once it does open. Thank you and have a good day.